So welcome everyone. Haven't had one of these in a while over the summertime, and then of course, just schedules get in the way. We're back here with our Simple Numbers webinar, and of course we'll be continuing to have these regularly. So a while back, I think it was in the beginning, maybe when I just started doing these, we had the CEO think tank, Cheryl, Beth. I talked to her a lot, so she was the first person I thought of. But I wanted to bring them back again. As you know, they are Gazelle's trained coaches. We know them very well, and been colleagues of ours for quite some time, and long time I've known you now. I think since I started here.
I was going to say almost 10 years, I think it is.
Yeah. Jill, like the same thing. And so what we wanted to do is towards the end of the year, bring in some topics that we've all been thinking about. And I mean, right now in the economy, we're dealing with a labor shortage. I'm sure some of you have felt that, inflation, supply chain issues. And so one of the big topics that has come up on a lot of our calls is, hey, I'm having trouble finding people. I'm having trouble retaining people. They're getting stolen from me. And so Cheryl, Beth, and Jill have come on here to bring, some remedies to that to present to you today, and, get all your thoughts. For those of you who just joined on, before we get started, one more time, a function accountability chart is in the chat along with the slides. Please go ahead and download them. Jill and Cheryl, Beth will be referring to that. So Jill, Cheryl, Beth, I'm going to share my screen here real quick, get this going, and then we'll let you introduce yourselves. Let me see, 1 second. Hold on. There we go.
You found it?
Yeah, now I'm looking for my Zoom. Hold on a second. Yeah, I'm all over the place. It's going to that presenter mode, which is really throwing me off. There we go. And I'm just going to share my screen. Screen 2.
Oh, for the new folks, you're going to end up having, Mike, you're going to end up having to do for the new folks that you'll have to put the functional accountability chart in again, as well as
will they not see will they not see it?
Yeah, the ones that are coming in now aren't seeing it. So
okay,
I saw in the chat. So yeah, that's a problem with chat.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me. I could not grab the invites there, so I'll throw it in one more time. There it is, along with the slides.
Great.
Cool.
And can you take us to the top?
Yes, I can.
And we'll kick it off.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, and then Mike is also going to be sharing. He'll put it into the chat again. He'll be sending you all a copy of the PDF of the slides. Hey, you're giving away the store here.
I know. That threw me all off. Sorry. Go ahead. Jeez. Way to start it. Go ahead.
Oh, I haven't. Anyway, welcome, folks. Will and I really appreciate. Thank you to Mike Maxon once again for having us back for maybe an encore performance. Thanks to those of you who are joining us today on our webinar, How to Attract and Retain A-Player Talent and Drive Bottom Line Profitability. We are very happy to have you with us today. And please, we are looking for participation, questions, interactions. So you can put questions in the chat. We'll be asking for some input. You can put Q&A in, and Mike is going to be monitoring, and there's a chat question for you right now, Mike.
All right.
As Mike said, I'm Cheryl Beth Kuchler. I'm the founder and president of CEO Think Tank. We are celebrating our silver anniversary this year, 25 years in business. We've been working with the small mid-market for about 20 years now, 2 decades, working with CEOs and entrepreneurs and other C-level executives to help them create and grow more valuable companies. I've also, as Mike said, been a scaling up certified coach for about a dozen years, and am very pleased to introduce to you my wing woman and my partner in crime and an alum of the CEO Think Tank program, Jill Huentelman, who is the founder and president of Learnia Training Solutions, an e-learning company for the past 20 years, and also a certified scaling up coach. So,
hey everybody.
Again, in the chat, please put your, put questions, comments, that type of stuff, put Q&A. We're going to try and take some pauses as we go through the material to get your feedback, but there we go. So let's talk about our learning objectives for today. Mike, if you can skip ahead.
Yep.
You can certainly cyber stalk us on, on LinkedIn or on the website or wherever, but here's why we're here. This is the tip of the iceberg, but our intent today is to help you to learn the 3 critical items that A players are looking for and how to provide them. We're going to give you an overview of talent development best practices to help you engage your employees and create a winning team, including sourcing best practices, job scorecards, top grading screening interviews, functional accountability chart, which is in the chat for you to download, and the 5 coaching conversations, as well as discover the 12 essential questions to help you focus and reduce the executive time that you need to manage your team. And at the end of the hour, for 5 of you who are qualified, you'll also have the opportunity for a complimentary talent assessment that will help you set the foundation for success with your company going into 2022. So Mike, can you flip again? So historically, we found that there are 3 areas where CEOs and C-level executives in the small and small mid-market space struggle the most when it comes to talent. Next slide. They struggle to attract and retain the right people to help them drive growth and profitability. Flip again. They have people on their teams who are not accountable, create drama, and don't get the results that the company needs in order to be successful. Flip again. And they don't know how to engage, motivate, and develop their employees to bring out the best of them. And of course, managing remotely is a challenge in and of itself. The current data that we've been looking at says it takes 2 to 3 times more energy to actually manage remotely. And if you feel like the temperature has been rising in the last 6 months, as Mike said earlier, it definitely has been, because now we're into the midst of the Great Recession. So our educated guess is that you are struggling with one or more of those issues: profitability, accountability, engagement. So in the chat, can you just give us an idea? What is your biggest challenge today when it comes to managing talent, managing it and engaging your talent? If you could just put it in the chat and send it to hosts and actually, if you can set, do you want them to send it to hosts and panelists and everybody?
Is that the poll I set up?
No,
No, that's a poll.
no,
Okay.
not the poll, just in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, just let us know so that we can sort of keep track of who's saying what.
So we see profits, attracting the right people,
Recruiting,
shortage of skilled labor. Yeah.
being qualified, recruiting, not being there, attracting new. Brent, hey, thanks for the question. We're actually going to get to that. I'm going to keep that up so that I remember to come back to that question. Retention of skilled labor. Retention.
Someone who wants to work.
Yeah,
Great one, Joanne.
How much we should, compensation. There you go. That's all right. That may be a whole nother topic. Most of the other topics that you've raised, I think we're going to be able to help. Relocation of families. All right. We're going to save some of these for the end. We will be doing Q&A at the end as well. So hiring the right people and effectively managing them. Great. All right. So that's helpful. Brent, let me get back to your question around, is it possible to bring in a lesser person and bring them up, or always get someone who has the skills? I think that's a great question, particularly for small companies. So Mike, can you flip for us, please?
Yep.
So let's start with getting on the same page vis-a-vis our working assumptions about talent, engagement, management, so that we're all on the same page. So Gallup is one of our go-to thought leaders around talent management and engagement. And what their research tells us over the past 30 years is that our focus as leaders and managers should be on increasing engagement, not on increasing happiness. human beings, according to their latest book, It's the Manager, are looking for three things. And this is to start getting you thinking about how am I providing this as I'm looking at how do I attract and retain, right? Three things. Human beings want respect for who they are and what they do. Human beings want a sense of purpose or meaning in their jobs and their companies. And they want someone who cares about them, preferably their manager, which is why we always say people will join companies, but they leave managers. But when you give them those three things, when you give them respect, when you give them purpose, when you give them someone who cares about them, you will increase engagement and you will get better productivity, improve your customer satisfaction and the quality of your work, and retain your A players. But how do you do that? Can you flip? So by using the 12 questions, right? So some of you may be familiar with this. For some of you, this may be a reminder of things that you already know, as Pat Lencioni says. For some of you, this may be new. But by using the 12 Gallup questions that are available all over the web, but also, as you can see right in front of us, and in the appendix 2 of one of our favorite new books called It's the Manager, the one you saw on the last slide, which we would highly recommend if you're looking at talent for next year, get a copy of It's the Manager. It is an amazing reference guide. Great reference manual, something our CEO Think Tank members are digging into right now. So can you flip to the next slide, Mike, for me?
Mhm.
So great management, as we said, is really about focusing on engagement, using the Gallup Q12 as the scorecard questions for how well we're doing. And the idea with those 12 questions is that we're looking for 4s and 5s. We're looking for people that strongly agree or agree with statements such as, I know what's expected of me at work. I have the right tools to do my job. I get some form of positive recognition every 7 days. My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. But it's all about managing the talent process, not just looking at the scorecard. So let's talk about the process. And again, what we call leadership and managing talent competencies, we call them soft skills, right? But they're some of the hardest to actually apply and to learn. And many of us have never really been trained in how to do it. And they start with a very big one, which is sourcing. And so some of you said your biggest challenge right now is recruiting and sourcing, right? Sourcing, attracting, interviewing, selecting are really big challenge in today's market. We continue with onboarding and sharing expectations, a step that we've found is often overlooked in smaller companies. And then finally, motivating and inspiring your folks and developing and growing your talent. So as you look at these 4 aspects of managing your talent, either selecting and recruiting and attracting, expectations, sharing expectations, motivating and inspiring or developing, we have a quick poll for you. So Mike, can you launch the poll?
Yes, I can.
Which of these
Launch.
areas do you feel you could use the most improvement in? If you could vote for us, we're just curious as to where you need the most improvement.
I like the none, I'm awesome.
Right. You could need help in all of the above, or you could have it handled, but then I'm not sure why you might be on this call.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? Remember again, and Jill and I are probably going to repeat ourselves several times. This Gallup discovered this 20, 25 years ago, and all of you who consider yourselves enlightened leaders should know it. People join companies, but they leave managers, right? People join companies, but they leave managers. And therefore that tells you where you want to be focusing your attention is on your managers. Did we get a vote on the poll?
Yes, it looks like we have 29% were at expectation, sharing, and onboarding. 21% were selection. 21% was all the above.
Okay.
And then, so then 18 was development and 11 was motivation and inspiration. So,
all right, there we go. So this is not rocket science. This whole thing is not rocket science. Thank you, Mike. That's great. All right, good, cool. But it does require commitment, it requires discipline, and it requires a willingness yourself as a leader to learn and grow. And again, for those of you that are looking to grow in this area over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, pick up a copy of It's the Manager, and you could actually dig into chapter 9, which I think starts off about interviewing and selecting and gets into managing. So let's talk about some of the tools that are available to help you, starting with 2 of our basic tools, sourcing A players and creating a job scorecard. So the other resource that we rely a lot on for the thought leadership around people is the book Who. So Jeff Smart, some of you may know, is the son of Brad Smart, who wrote the book Top Grading. Love top grading. We'll be talking about top grading. The issue that we find with top grading is that top grading can be a little complicated. And Jeff sort of took what Brad had written in the top grading book and downsized it for smaller companies. One of the key things that Jeff talks about is that people leave off the talent equation is how do you actually source people? How do you actually recruit people? Because that's the key part to getting A players, is having access to the right A players, not without significant effort. The CEOs of companies who were interviewed for Jeff Smart's book, the Who book, recognize that recruitment is one of their most important jobs, right in line with revenue generation, creating strategic partnerships. You need to put recruiting on your number 1 job or number 2 jobs on your scorecard. And many of you have probably outsourced, candidates from advertisements in one form or the other. The issue is when you put an ad out there, it's a good way to get a lot of resumes, but they're not necessarily the right flow of candidates. Other methods that people that we are familiar with are using are recruiters and using human resources folks to help them to staff. But again, that depends heavily on the quality of the recruiter, which is assigned to your search. So being very clear, you'll notice number 3 says use a recruiter you trust. Have very clear expectations when you use a recruiter. Make sure that you're game for their process. Yeah, not yet. We'll stick with this one. Understand
My bad.
the process that they're using, and we're going to talk about job scorecards in a minute. But the fact is that we're constantly amazed that more companies don't have we're hiring or we're looking for talent on their website. You should have the same disciplined approach to finding prospective candidates for employment as you do for prospective candidates for your customers and your clients. Or even just making sure that it's findable on their website. A lot of times the come to work with us, or how do you, that's buried at the bottom. We're talking about the upper fold. How many of you have employees writing stories about their experiences of working for you? And where are you putting those? Are you putting those on your website? Are you putting those out on LinkedIn? A players are looking for this type of information. How many of you are actually actively managing your Glassdoor and in your Indeed profiles? And again, who's putting referrals out there from your current employees to talking about what a great place you are to work? How many of you are managing your brand for prospective employees the same way you manage it for prospective clients and customers? You need to sort of turn your recruiting hat into a marketing hat. And of all the ways to source candidates, the number 1 best way, according to Jeff, is to pay your employees and managers a recruiting bounty. So in 2016, the average recruiting bounty was $1,000 when Jeff did a survey. I am sure it's gone up since then.
Yeah, it has. Wow.
Take a poll.
Where's that recruiter at? Yeah. Jeez.
I think a key question that I always ask, because we as leaders, we should always be recruiting. That's part of what we're responsible for. But to ask the question of people that are A players, because A players like to hang out with other A players, right? Like, who are the most talented people you know who might be a good fit for our company? Like, and just ask that question to any person who's an A player that you might meet, because that can just help you keep sourcing, right, on an ongoing basis. But just make that, I'd say, make that part of your vocabulary, you know, for it.
Ours is 2,500 to 5,000 and doesn't get a second look. Yeah.
Yeah.
Been
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and quite frankly, that's one of the reasons why we said this is simple, but it's not necessarily easy. You just like marketing, investing in marketing can sometimes not pay off for 6 to 12 months. Some of the things that we're talking about, making sure that you're actively promoting employment, you're actively having people within your company talk about what a great place it is to work. Those types of things are going to take time, but you can very easily, you know, within a week or so, modify your website to make sure that your website at least is reflecting the fact that you're looking, and start using your current employees to send out, hey, we're looking, you know, so
Yeah.
so taking advantage of that, I think.
Definitely a holistic approach. I know, remember Sean Bussey, for anyone's on here, he was a presentation a few months ago. He writes the best job descriptions, and like you read his job description and you're like, I want to work there, you know? And so I think in terms of obviously recruiting, but you really gotta, I mean, in this market, especially, it's a holistic approach. Hey, how are my job descriptions? How are my culture? Am I getting my team to maybe refer people they know? You know, obviously the recruiter you can trust, job descriptions, website, and maybe your website, instead of selling to customers, needs to actually sell more to potential hires. So those are all options. So I think it's everything. I mean, right now it's, hey, who can get the best edge across the board to get people in.
Right. And back to the provocative job ads, I think that have your ads, if you are doing ads, make sure that they're provocative, make sure that you're clarifying who you don't want working for you and who you do want working for you. So this is the one piece, right? How do you get great candidates? The second piece is building the right scorecard for that you're interviewing against the right criteria. And I'm going to pass the virtual baton over to Jill for this.
Yeah. So thank you. So this is kind of the second piece here of these foundational items that help you attract the right talent and then also retain your A players, right? And what we mean by A players, just to make sure we're all on the same page with that, those are the ones that live your organization's core values, and also the ones that have high productivity in the role that they're in, right? So that's what we mean by A players. They do both. So at the end of the day, one of the key tools that we use are job scorecards. And job scorecards, we recommend, are had for every position, because really it's a blueprint for articulating and communicating what the key outcomes are for that particular role within your organization. And this is not a job description, so that just outlines responsibilities. So the difference between a job description and a scorecard is, a job description, we're really good at identifying key activities and responsibilities, which is fine to help recruit, but the ones that can help source talent and keep them, bring this scorecards to the front during the selection process, because this is about outcomes. This is about SMART objectives, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound objectives and outcomes for the position that you're recruiting for. And these are dynamic, meaning you can update these quarterly with the actual A player talent that you have on staff. So a scorecard has a mission for that particular role. Like, why does that position exist at the end of the day? And then it has the key accountabilities, goals, and metrics that need to be achieved in order for the person occupying that role to get an A, right? So it all goes back to the questions 1 and 2 on the Gallup 12 that Cheryl Beth went over. People know what's expected of them, and they have the right tools and resources to do their job. Every person on your leadership team should have a scorecard and should know what outcomes they're responsible for. A players love this. And I'll tell you, when I use scorecards, when I do use scorecards, I use the job description to recruit. And then when I have a really good candidate, I then bring out the job scorecard before they're hired. And I say, this is what's expected of this role this quarter. Does that match your expectations so that we can make sure we have the right candidate? And your A players will love that. They'll be like, oh my God, I want to come work for you because I'm a match. I know I can do this job and be successful for it. So it's not something that you use after you've selected that candidate. It can actually be used as part of the hiring process.
Bill, how long do you, some people, we've done, monthly check-ins when it comes to retaining people when they feel distant from their manager. We, at our office here, we do monthly check-ins with our team. So we talk monthly. But how often do you all recommend that? Is that monthly, bi-weekly, quarterly?
This is like coming up on a slide, Mike. And there's actually 5 coaching conversations that you have at different cadences for job scorecards specifically. I recommend that you have monthly meetings that see how you're progressing against your goals, and then every quarter update the scorecard itself with the target metrics so that so it's timely, right? So that it can change as the business changes. Does that answer your question? But I'll get to all those coaching conversations.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I just popped in my mind, so I thought.
It's a great question. It's a great question.
Well, and this also gets to Brent's question, Brent, that you asked earlier, which is it possible to bring in a lesser person and bring them up to speed, or do you always get someone with the skills? Back to Jill's comment, it's what the company needs at this time. So
right.
The scorecard ought to be reflecting what you need at this particular time.
Right. And that scorecard can be rewritten as new or different accountabilities kind of become apparent. Okay, so that's kind of with scorecards. And then we found, you can go to the next slide, Mike, here. We found in our work with clients that sometimes people struggle with scorecards, right? So to make it easier, we're going to break it down here. There's 3 parts to most people's jobs. So can you, thank you. You're so good at this, Mike.
I'm on it. I'm on it.
Yes. So the 3 parts to a job are, the first is to manage, what do they need to do to manage the day-to-day operations, right? What are they doing in their job to manage the people or relationships that they come in connection with? And the third is what part of their job is about managing the improvements in their role, improvements in the process, improvements in the company. What are they accountable for that? So if you kind of think about it in those 3 kind of big categories, it can be, I think, pretty helpful. And then sometimes we have a 4th area, which is all the learning or development goals for that person, based on what their career aspirations are or where they're kind of headed for it. But the trick with all of this, one more animation, Mike, is it's all about the KPIs, key performance indicators, and the outcomes, right, that are achieved. So you need to have outcomes articulated and aligned with your A players, all in those 3 areas, and whatever their development and learning goals are. So can I ask in the chat for everyone, do you guys have scorecards or outcomes that you manage to and are clearly communicated to your team, to your people? I'm just curious here.
How many people have actual job scorecards, not just job descriptions?
Okay.
No said.
No. Work in progress. Some do. I like the frowny face. Negative. Yes. Oh, 555. Yep.
Yes, but more in development. Yep.
Okay. So a little bit of a mosh. I found with scorecards, like, I don't know, like to me, that helps weed out some of your maybe talent. The A players want to know how they're going to get an A at the end of the day. So scorecards, I'm a big proponent of. We just yell at each other across the shop floor.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a template for that. So I think you guys are getting these slides. And that was the scorecard template that you can use to maybe help craft those if you don't have them in your organization. Okay.
And a few folks, if you want a couple sample scorecards, reach out just to us individually through the website, and we can get you a couple of samples as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're looking for meeting sheets too, Rob Simons did a webinar a while back where we have like the one-on-one meeting sheets to talk about too. So, and if you don't know what to talk about, maybe on the monthly side, because that's more on the lines of like, hey, personal development, professional development, some goals, some basic stuff to add in to help create your full. Because if it's like anybody, you're going to create really what works for you. Like, so we use some of the stuff that CBK and Jill are doing, and then we also have other stuff that we've added in, kind of like a hodgepodge, but it works and it gives more to talk about and things like that.
Okay.
But their template's really good to get a good start on what to use, and then build in the other things around it to make a very productive meeting that you can update every month or quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we're going to actually be doing an encore with Rob Simons and stuff, because we're going to be talking about that shortly too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. So next slide, Mike. And this is,
Yep.
This might be something that you just want to think about in your role too, because it always starts with your role. So it might be something where you take time and write down what are the key outcomes for your position and how is success measured, right? So again, all goes back down to outcomes. So the two resources that I want to highlight here for more information about scorecards, you can go to Top Grading is a great book. That's for best talent strategies, recruiting, hiring, and then of course Who by Jeff Smart, right? I like for smaller organizations Who because it also talks about strategies for sourcing, selecting, selling candidates, to come work for you. Like it's actually a really tangible nuts and bolts type of book. Okay, so before I hand it back over to Cheryl, Beth, just what's one key takeaway you've heard so far, and anything kind of we've talked about? If you could put it in the chat, that would be great, on kind of hiring or on helping scorecards. Any one key thing you've heard so far?
Just as feedback for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Good.
Yeah, buy the book. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
definitely a few books here that we're going to recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And somebody made a comment about finding, again, like, honestly, you have to be proactive. I mean, just the same way that most of you have innate characteristics that you are really good at selling your companies and selling yourselves to prospective clients. You've got to use those same innate characteristics to sell yourself to prospective employees. And that may mean you go on to LinkedIn and you reach out to current, people that are working for somebody else, and you say, hey, looks like you have the type of background that we're looking for. You're probably really happy with where you're working, but I'd love to talk to you and see if you've got people in your network that might fit our criteria. You got to go steal folks.
Hey, as long as it's not mine, I don't care. So.
Cool. All right.
All right, Cheryl, Beth, I hand it over to you.
All right. So next slide, Mr. Maxon. Thank you. All right. So let's move along the pipeline and talk about successful hiring. Because again, this is one of the areas that we see smaller companies really struggle with. So again, Gallup has spent decades doing research in hundreds of companies across 2,000, hundreds of jobs across 2,000 companies. And along the way, they've discovered 4 criteria for successful hiring, and 5, what they call generally innate traits or tendencies that predict performance across job type. The most robust interviewing process includes 4 key things. 1, you need to interview to learn about and dig into an individual's prior experiences and achievements, which is where the techniques that are talked about in top grading come into play, and who. With people, unlike the stock market, past performance is the biggest indicator of future performance, and you've got to understand what people are bringing to the table. And if you're interviewing folks that are like coming out of university or only have 1 or 2 years of experience, dig into their experiences when they were in high school and college to really figure out who they are. Make sure that you're using an interview technique that really plows into the candidate's experience, what they did, including how they analyzed situations, how they decided on a course of action, and what they learned from the experience. And have a number of data points by using multiple interviewers, right? Multiple interviews with multiple interviewers, at least 2 people in each one, to be able to compare reactions, gather data. You're never going to eliminate biases completely, but at least hopefully you'll minimize some of the biases. And then if you can, have a sample day where they just come in. We have clients that have done this. They just invite people to come in for a day to experience what it's like to actually work with them, have an internship, use universities that have internships and co-ops to really get on the job data. And all these 4 things are really geared towards evaluating the candidate's 5 innate traits, which is what you're going to be evaluating as you're taking them through that process. 1, motivation, right? Their drive for achievement. 2, what's their work style? How do they organize work? How do they initiate and take action? How do they collaborate or not collaborate with other people? And then again, what's their thought process? You're really trying to use this process to get inside their heads. The key is to listen, back to our earlier conversation, right? You've got to ask good questions. You've got to use active listening as part of this process. And oh, by the way, this doesn't even include the core values. This is just the basic core competencies that you're going to be looking for. Can you flip to the next one?
Yeah, Cheryl, Beth, one thing I was thinking about, because we've run into it right now, is speed, right? Like speed is your friend. And
Yeah.
so one of the things, that we've run into, we're like, we've interviewed interviewed 2 other people, then we're like, all right, we want to bring the other one in. Next thing you know, I already got a job offer.
Yeah.
So do you recommend maybe beefing up when you get them in the building, maybe beef up that whole interview right then and there, or instead of trying to prolong it, just surely because they're just getting stolen. Like some people might interview them once and,
right.
take them.
Yeah, I mean, the more transparent you can be with candidates, again, back to Jill's comment about the scorecard, right? The more transparent you can be about, here is our interview process. This is how long it's going to take. Or this is is that going to work for you? Do we need to change it in order to accommodate your schedule? So, again, approach.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Right. Approach candidates the way you'd approach a prospective client. Put
that's good.
That sales hat on, but flip it over to your prospect. And yes, we do have clients that are interviewing for like warehouse workers, where they're literally setting up, a thing at the warehouse. They're advertising, hey, we're interviewing people today between this time and this time. If you meet our criteria, I'm actually The Body Shop. There's a really great article that we have from The Body Shop in Australia, where they basically will offer them that day contingent on like a drug screening or something, where they do that, Mike. They take them through speeding the process up using things like text messaging, particularly for like millennials and Gen Zs.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's good advice on just, setting the expectations from the beginning, because maybe they might wait too, if that's the case, if they like it. I also would like to tell everyone too, one thing we've just done, and we never really had done it over the years, but if you're able to, is utilize the internships. You get a chance, it's a low risk hire. Typically it's for usually a short duration, 3 months, 4 months, maybe over a summer or a semester. And you get a chance to really see how they are and integrate them in. And then a lot of times they might want to come back and work for you if they have a good time. So I know we've had some success doing that in terms of them working and then us hiring them and them wanting to come back to you later. So, and it lets them tell other people about you too. So a little free marketing there.
Right. Well, and leverage the folks that have worked in internships for you when they go back to college, when they go back to school. Say, hey, you know, if you know of any other folks like you, right? If they are an A player, you know, send them our way. You know, we're looking to cultivate. And that's a bit back to Brent's question. That's the way that you get those, quote, less skilled, less experienced workers in. I mean, there's tons of kids, young young people graduating from universities today that don't have jobs because they didn't get the work experience, but they've got other experience as well that, you know, there's no reason for them to not be part of your consideration.
Mhm. Yep.
So let's just talk about the one top grading interview that I believe is underutilized based on which is the screening interview. And again, this gets back to the time question that Mike said. You know, if our objective is to try and utilize our time best, this interview should take no more than 30 minutes, right? And again, you need to have the job scorecard in front of you to help you stay focused. You should be looking for those 5 and 8 traits, right? The motivation, the work style, the initiation. It should preferably be done in tandem with somebody else with you, so that one person is writing and the other person is asking the questions. And again, as with all the interviews throughout the process, you need not just be asking the questions, but you have to be active listening. You have to be writing down the answers. You have to be probing the candidate to get as much information as possible about their career goals, what they think their strengths are, what they're not good at. This interview all by itself in 30 minutes or less will get you at least 50% of the way there. And quite frankly, for the wrong candidate, you'll know within 15 or 20 minutes if they're the wrong candidate. So less talking, because entrepreneurs are notorious for liking to sell their companies right from the very beginning. More listening on this one. So back to, can you flip to the next?
Yep.
So back to what A players want. And again, Jill's talked about this, right? So the first thing is they want to work with other A players. So you need to up your game. You need to strengthen your culture. You need to have other A players. You need to be very clear in your expectations. They need to know how they're going to get an A. So make sure you're clear about your expectations. Make sure you're clear about how they're going to win with scorecards, and then have the opportunity to learn and grow and develop. So give them a roadmap, talk to them about their desires and where they want to go. You saw that was one of the first questions in the screening interview, right? How are they going to get there working for you? What does their path look like in order to get there?
So Cheryl Beth, Rhonda asked, for the screening interview, can we have a lower level employee do this step, or does it need to be the owner of the company?
How big is the company?
Yeah, I'm not letting Greg Crabtree interview people. He just talks all the time.
It's a really good question, Rhonda. I mean, so here's the deal, right? We just talked about it about 20 minutes ago, like the CEO's number one job needs to be around sourcing candidates. If you're a small company, I do believe that the CEO ought to be the one, or the COO ought to be the one who's doing the screening interview. I mean, maybe if you're a little bit bigger and you've trained your HR folks, or you've gotten HR folks that have the right experience, you could pass along the screening interview. But think about the impression, again, in this tough job market, think about the impression that you're making.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it depends on the role, right, that you're recruiting for. I know in my company, when I had about 10 people, my HR person would actually do the screening interview and those questions, but I always had the last interview specifically around culture fit, right, when it had to do with core values. I needed it. Everybody else interviewed about all the productivity and their experience and can they do the job. I was about core value fit. So if you have 20, 30 employees, it might be dependent on what role they're recruiting for. If it's a high level leadership role, I would say the owner owns that. for sure, because there could be things in that initial screening conversation that you would flag that a lower level employee would not. So I think it depends on the role that you're recruiting.
Yeah, break it up. Yeah, breaking it up's not bad. We've done that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps, Rhonda. How should you compensate for the work experience day? Oh, that's a good question too. So just a little anecdotal information. I would pay them. I would give them something for showing up, particularly if they're already working for somebody else. The restaurant industry is notorious for doing what they call stages, which are auditions for like a line cook position. My son just went through this. He's working as a line cook at a restaurant here in Philadelphia, and stages are typically not paid. And the company that he actually went to work for, remember, restaurants are dying for people. He came home. I said, "How'd the stage go?" He said, "I got a job. I got a job offer." So back to that instantaneous thing, right, Mike? The second thing he says, "And you know what, Mom? I actually got paid. I got $10 an hour." So he ended up making $50, and nobody else is paying in that industry. So again, getting back to who are you competing against and what are they doing? And you need to up your game in order to get A players. Any other?
Make sure you check too with HR, state dependent too, on how you might compensate someone for that. There might be different rules for different states on if you do that for a person. Like they might require you to do a pay at minimum wage, or you actually can set a contract for that day. So just double check that one on, because some states you might have to, versus others.
Thank you. That's good, Mike. Thanks. So here's the other way that we think you need to up your game. Again, A players want to work with other A players. So the functional accountability chart, next slide, that Mike put in the chat a few times, is the way to do that. Having clarity about what functions need to be done in your company, who's in each of those functions, and how their performance is going to be measured. In other words, how they're going to get an A is critical. In general, you should be revisiting your functional accountability chart. And this comes from Scaling Up. I know EOS has their own version. And I mean, ultimately, Michael Gerber was the one who originally started with functional accountability charts way back when with the E-Myth. But we recommend you revisit your functional accountability chart whenever accountabilities change. And given over the last year that we've had pandemics and downsizings and upsizings and reorgs and strategic pivots, if you haven't done one of these in a while, take a day, take a few hours and just revisit it, right? The one that we sent you actually has the different functions on it. In the left-hand column, head of company, operations, marketing, sales, controller, tech, IT, customer service. Take a few minutes and fill in that column. Who in your company currently is in that function, right? What they are accountable to perform against. So again, how will they get an A? What's expected of them? If you don't have a leading indicator, put a lagging indicator in. But what target are they supposed to be reaching in order to get an A? And then reflect on it. Like, do I have empty boxes? Do I have two people's names in one box? Is my name in all the boxes, right? These are some of the issues that we get into with a functional accountability chart. But typically we find that there's a lack of clarity, that this is not looked at enough. And oh, by the way, then when you have people coming on board, right, and you're onboarding them, you can share it with them. You can say, here's the functions in our company, here's who's accountable for those functions, and this is how they get an A. So everybody understands what the report card is for everybody. Jill, anything else on that one?
No, I'm a fan of this one too.
This is your homework, folks. If you haven't, who's done a functional accountability chart in the last 6 months for their company? Like, just show of hands. Yes, I've done one, or no, I need to do one in the chat.
This is where that whole labor efficiency thing can come into play.
Oh, good.
Awesome.
All right, good. Need to do it. We've done it.
Yes. No, me too.
All right, good. All right, well, this may not be some people's short leg, but it looks like other people's short leg. So Jill is going to talk about the whole being paid to. We're you're getting paid to do, and some 2 critical tools that you need to be implementing.
All right, so here's, all human beings, what we want to know is what's expected from us, and players want to know how to get that A, right, at the end of the day. And if they're not, they want to get the feedback on how they're doing on that path to getting an A, as well as to learn and to grow. So we've got 2 critical tools that help us manage time and talent to help engage with those A players. So tool number 1 we've talked about. So next thing, scorecards. I think everybody's heard that for it. The second one gets back to the comment that Mike made around like check-in meetings, right? Around what are those coaching conversations? Because we believe as managers, your role is to become really good coaches too, to help grow your next level of leaders. But we have to have the right kind of check-in meetings, and we call these speed bumps that allow us to reflect, allow us time to give feedback, allow us time to recalibrate so that, A players can continue to develop, learn, and grow. So next slide, Mike. So with that, we've already talked about individual accountability and making sure, this is a reminder, 3 parts to a job. Does everybody know what that is? Okay, Mike.
There you go.
Day-to-day, manage people, relationship, and improvements. That's all the scorecard part. The second part here are these review meetings and these pauses or speed bumps. Because once you've had your position scorecard defined, you can track your progress in our check-in meetings. So next slide, Mike. And there are a couple of things with progress meetings. There are 5 focus areas. It shouldn't take more than 30 to 45 minutes, right, to use your progress review to talk about these 5 things. What were your top planned actions? Or in this case, this might be the week, your progress to date, review of any challenges, rewards, if you need any support or resources, and what are those top actions planned for the next time period before you get to your next progress review. Gallup calls this meeting the check-in meeting, and it's one of 5 critical coaching conversations that you need to have to engage with your A players. So Mike, this goes back to you. Here are the 5 critical coaching conversations. So, and it's in the book, It's the Manager. There, oh look, Cheryl, Beth.
Yes, this is your homework. Get the book.
Get the book and read these definitions, but these are the 5 coaching conversations you should have. So the first is around role and relationship orientation. So that's about defining what success looks like. And how their work relates to their coworkers' expectations. So when you hire somebody or you put somebody in a new role, you have that role and relationship orientation. There's the quick connect. Those are the 1 to 10 minute kind of quick connects that you might do once a day or once a week, just to kind of keep things on track. The check-in meeting, that's the weekly meeting where you can review successes, barriers, align on priorities. Developmental coaching, it's usually like monthly to give feedback on their development path, and then their progress reviews. That's where you can also update your scorecard on how are they doing against their scorecard and the outcomes, right? So you can do progress reviews meeting. So those are the 5 kind of coaching conversations. So how many of you, this will be my last question, and then I'll hand it back over to Cheryl, Beth. How many of you are doing all 5? Anybody? Say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What are you doing?
What are you doing?
This is real organized.
All right.
None. Oh, none. So this is one of those, oh yeah, 4. Some are doing 4, 3 to 5. Okay, 1. Like, these are like the 5 things.
Not in a militant way.
God, A players love feedback. A players want to know how they're developing. A players want to know how they're doing against their outcomes. A players want to know that you care. And so these are the 5 that I would say you want to check out.
And definitely working remotely too. This is probably real huge with all the remote work going on.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people, especially with remote, because you're not in the room with them, what you can do though is measure based on outcomes. So again, back to scorecards, right? So if you don't know how that person's doing because you're not in the room, you can always go back to something that's a little bit more quantitative, and that's more scorecards based. So that's the progress reviews. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is usually where we also get the biggest pushback, quite frankly, from entrepreneurs, because they're like, do I really need to be having all these meetings? And again, they don't have to be long meetings if you're doing it regularly. And you can even do the quick check-in via email, right? Just, hey, what's your biggest accomplishment this week? What's on deck for next week? Or you can get a feel for this, and if you're doing daily huddles, right? Which we would also recommend. So this is where the investment comes in.
But I call this a barrier to people jumping ship and getting poached by, your competition. If you're connected to your people and you're having these conversations, it's a lot harder to just walk away, So to me, this is a strategy to retain your A players, like hands down. So,
Thanks.
All right, back to you, Cheryl.
So can you, so at this point, we've got about 5 minutes left or so. So if you've got questions, that you're looking for some feedback on, please put it in the Q&A so that we can make sure that we address them. We did want to take a couple minutes just to recap and review what we've talked about. We've talked about, this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Like any big process. We wanted to give you some foundational items, some basics that all enlightened leaders should be using. People join companies, but they leave managers. And by focusing on your managers and how you're managing people, you will improve engagement and productivity and customer satisfaction and profitability. It's not rocket science, but it does require commitment and discipline to each of these steps in the process: the attracting and selecting and sourcing and interviewing, sharing expectations and onboarding, motivating and inspiring and developing. I think we've talked about, can you flip to the next page, Mike?
Yep, I got a question too for you.
Yeah. We've talked about the 3 critical items that A players are looking for, right? They want to be clear about scorecards. They want to work with other A players. They want to learn and grow. We've talked about these 5 talent best practices: ways to source, job scorecards, top grading screening interview, the functional accountability chart, and the 5 coaching conversations, and the Gallup Q12. If you want any help getting these items done, or if you just want some of the resources that we've been talking about, can you flip to the next one? Just go to CEO Think Tank's website. You'll see at the top right-hand corner, it says free consultation. Just fill it out and say, hey, we were on CRI's webinar and we need this, and we'll get it to you. If you're one of the first 5 to get with us, we're happy to do a complimentary talent assessment with you and dig into any one of these. So let me stop there for a minute. What are some of the questions we've got, Mike?
Yeah, so first one is, before we close, can you please remind us the difference between an A player and a superstar and the possible disruptions resulting?
Disruptions. I'm not sure what's meant by that.
Let's rephrase it to say, hey, the difference between an A player and not an A player, and what could result if you don't hire an A player. Maybe that's what he means. You can correct me, William, if I'm wrong. But
so an A player is, it might be a difference between an A and an A plus player. I might put it that way. So an A player is one that lives your core values and is able to be high from a productivity standpoint on the outcomes that have been defined for their role. And an A plus player, hey, Cheryl, Beth, do you have, I forget the key questions you want to ask with an A plus player that basically are off the charts on that scale of high productivity. They're meeting it for the position and living the core values. But
right. Well, and you have to recognize with those A++ players, you're only going to keep them probably for a short period of time. So quite frankly, one of the biggest things is to be upfront again. Hey, I recognize that you've got these really great goals. We probably won't be able to keep you forever, but we'd like to keep you for a certain amount of time. What do we need to do? What kinds of learning and growth opportunities would you need in order to stay here for 2 or 3 years?
Right.
Or even 4 or 5. And the key to having those A players, those really strong A players, is they help you systematize so that then you can bring in a B+ player and you can still get the same results.
Yeah.
Hope that helps.
Good. Next one. Do you have any opinion on what, should you use personality profile tests, and which one do you recommend?
So yes, I mean, I think you have to make sure you're using the ones that are okay to use for job applications, right? So predictive indicator, PI, Caliper, Hogan, the one from Strategic Coach that I can never remember. All of those are actually valid for hiring. I mean, I'm a really big believer in using StrengthsFinder, but only after. You can't use that to hire. You can only do it after you've hired them. So I always go in and find out what StrengthsFinder, which again, that's through Gallup, right? What their strengths are. Do they have executing strengths? Do they have influencing strengths? So that I'm not expecting a pig to fly. I'm realistic about what I'm looking for from this person, and I know that their brains are wired that way. So hopefully that helps.
Any tips to maintain this in your organization when you're only recruiting a handful of people a year? We lost a lot of effectiveness over the pandemic with recruiting on hold.
Jill, what about you? Because that's from.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like I'm a big process oriented person, but I would say if I had the right tools in place that's already documented, and I'm only recruiting a handful of people a year, at least I go back to the same process, right? It shouldn't be then something that you have to maintain. The only caveat with that is asking that question that I said before, like, do you know of any A players or talented people I should know that, that I should consider talking to? I would be doing that all the time. And that's just a really lightweight way of keeping the candidate pipeline open. And to reinforce as a leader, part of your job is recruitment, like all the time. So I would pick that one as like a strategy to keep it going.
And you can even make it a KPI. Honestly, you could make that a KPI on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis for every person on your leadership team. How many new prospects for employees have you chatted with, or who's on your bench, right? For any open positions that we have. So you could just, the thing about always be closing,
always be recruiting.
And I will say this to everyone on here: when it comes to check-ins, these meetings and things like that to go all year, let's all be honest. One of the main things that stops everyone is that we get too busy. And one of the things you should make for your organization is that it's a schedulable thing and someone owns it. For example, I haven't scheduled a check-in meeting in 2 years because we have an admin staff that is doing that for our team. So the check-ins are scheduled, the reviews are scheduled, and that is happening every single month. And so what you got to do is you give it to someone in your managers to say, hey, these are the people you're checking in with every month. It gets scheduled every month, roughly the same time. If it does need to be moved, that's fine. But make things a schedulable act that someone owns to get it on everybody's.
That's awesome. I love
we
that,
miss
Mike.
it a lot of times because we just get busy and you're like, oh, I'll schedule it with them. Next thing you know, 4 months have gone by and that person's had a huge problem and you've never been able to talk to them about it or resolve any issues they have. So make it a schedulable thing someone owns.
So the one last question that I'm seeing here from Joanne is about, do you ever ask the person, what does a great place to work look like? Again, getting back to the Gallup idea of, you want to go back to their past experiences. So instead of saying, what does it look like, and have them just create something out of thin air, ask them, as you look back over your work experiences, what was the best place that you worked at and why? So base it in reality. Like, why did you like that place? Why did you like that boss or manager? How did you learn and grow? Like, again, use their past experiences to help predict future performance. Don't just have them make it up. You want to ground it in reality. And then you can ask, how did you find that? Like, what did you do about that? And then you can understand how they reacted to that. So ground it, looking for those innate tendencies and grounding it in past behaviors is important. There you go. Cool. And DISC, I believe DISC is valid for hiring, last I saw, but check that. Cool. And yes, we will be, sending out the slides and the recording. So just, can you quickly, I recognize we're at time. Can you quickly just, let us know what's your biggest takeaway? Like, what's the one thing that you're going to do going away from this? Something that you should always be asking people. What's the one thing that you're going to commit to doing before Thanksgiving in the next 14 days? Always be recruiting. There you go. One takeaway. If you can just put it in the chat.
They're already off recruiting, Cheryl. Beth.
Yeah, right, yeah.
They're already setting up their meetings.
I'm glad I got to. Who's Daryl? Where is Daryl coming from? He's another one of your Australians?
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking that too. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, Hazem. The scorecard is critical. New Zealand. There you go.
Yeah. Thanks, Daryl.
Awesome.
Cool.
Functional
And again,
accountability.
please reach out to us. We are happy to spend time with you all. We are happy to give you, a talent assessment, and just go to the website and click on the free consultation.
Yeah, I can vouch. Several of our clients work with Cheryl, Beth, and Jill, and they do great work. So please go ahead and reach out to them should the need arise for some good old business coaching. They know their stuff. So anyways, both of you, thank you very much. Again, it's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon talking about, I'm sure, something else you know about. So
Thanks, Mike.
it'll be interesting what it is next year we have to deal with. So all right. See you, everyone. Thanks for attending.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.